Hello guys, it's been a while since I did a tutorial video. So today we're going to look at 3 basic elements of photography. Before we move on, these 3 basic elements have one common purpose, which is lighting the subject. So these 3 elements will control how much light you let into the camera. One more thing. Please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for more contents like this. The very first element we are going to look at is shutter speed. A shutter is nothing unusual. It's just like that. A door. Every camera in the planet has its own door called shutter. The moment you press the shutter button, your camera will open the shutter and close it. That's the moment where your camera takes a picture. Going back to shutter speed. Shutter speed determines the time which the shutter remains open and closed. As long as the shutter is open in your camera, it will collect more light into the sensor. Shutter speed varies for different cameras. Basically, it starts from 1/4000 second and goes up to 30 seconds. And there is another mode called bulb mode. With that mode, you can keep the shutter open as much as you want. So to close it, you just have to press the shutter button to close the shutter back. Shutter speed completely controls the light limit to get into the camera. For example, if you shoot indoors, you need to keep the shutter speed as slow. Not too slow, but a little bit slow to get a good picture. Basically, shutter speed gives you an option to light up a subject. In case if you are shooting indoors, you might or might not have proper lighting. In that case, you can just pump down the shutter speed a bit slow and get a picture. But remember that slower shutter speed means you may get the blurry pictures. So in that case, you may need to use tripods. Next, we are going to look at situations where we need to use higher shutter speed. Daylight. When you're shooting at daylight, especially on a sunny day at noon, as we all know, sunlight will be very harsh. At that situation, we just have to pump up the shutter speed up to which we need. It may differ upon the lighting or the background. It depends on the situation or the photos you are taking. So it will eventually help to control the light. Higher shutter speed means you can reduce the amount of light getting into the camera. Not only that, shutter speed have another purpose also. Speed. See, photography depends upon the subject, right? You may shoot a standing object, for example portraits. People won't run, so they are gonna stand still. So you can take picture as normal. But if you are shooting at kids who's just running around, we have to get a proper picture. If you just click, then you may get a blurry picture where the kids might be moving, the hands might be waving, right? So to avoid that, you just have to control the shutter speed. As long as you go high on shutter speed, you are having a possibility to get a good picture on a fast moving object. Now let's move on to the second basic element, which is aperture. First, let's see what is an aperture. Aperture is a process which determines a certain blade which is present in the lens. The range of aperture will vary for different lenses. For example, cheap lenses will have a slower aperture which will range up to 3.5 or 4. Higher end lenses will have a wide open aperture which will go up to 1.2, but it will cost a lot more. At the beginning, I told you guys that these 3 elements have common thing, right? That is light. Yes, the aperture will also help you to get a more additional lights for your photos. Let's discuss the aperture ranges. Aperture will be determined by f-stops. It will be called as f-stops. But to calculate it, you have to go vice versa. For example, the higher the number goes, the aperture size will be reduced. For example, if you go at f-stop 8, then the aperture blade will close, which means that it will get less light. So if you reduce the number count, the apertures will start to open wide. For example, if you go up to 1.8, then it will be wide open. It will let higher amount of lights into the camera. So with aperture, you can control the amount of light from the lens itself. Even aperture has its own advantage, a unique advantage, which is depth of field. Depth of field will help you to pop out the subject from the background, which means when you go with the higher value in aperture, you're gonna get a beautiful background blur. So it will help you to separate the subject from the background. And also with the higher end lenses, you can get a beautiful bokeh. Yeah, only photographers will understand the word. Here comes a bonus tip, a pro tip. If you're using cheap lenses, just like 50mm 1.8 lens, it might sound 1.8, a higher aperture. But remember that if you're using that lens at the higher aperture value, you're gonna get the soft images. To evade that, you just have to decrease the aperture value to get more sharp images. I see you can get a proper image at 2.8, so I would suggest you to use 2.8 on the lens. Now we are going to talk about the last and third thing, ISO. It's not a physical thing, but it plays a vital role in photos and videos. Unlike the other two, these have just one and sole purpose, which is light. So ISO will help you to get more light or less light, depends on the situation. Professional will use ISOs for maybe a little bit of adjustment. For example, if they are getting an image maybe a bit too dark to get additional light, or if they get a too harsh light, so to evade that, they're going to use a little bit lower ISOs to get a proper light. ISO value ranges from 100 and goes up to 1 lakh, which depends on the camera. Alright, so let's take an example. Let's take a cheaper one, right? I'm gonna take a Canon camera, which ISO starts from 100 and goes up to 6400. This is the total range of that camera. There's a catch. Do you think you can use the highest value and get a good image? No, you can't. You just have to use the ISO to generally correct the lighting situation. You can't just totally depend on it to get a better image. ISO will help you to get a little bit more or a little bit less, right, to get a better image or video. That's it from me, friends. I hope you learned something from this video. You gained some knowledge about photography from this video. If you did, please subscribe to our channel for more contents like this. I'm gonna try to do more tutorials videos from now onwards, maybe 2 videos for a week. So stay tuned for that. Until then, bye bye.